You can almost feel the pain of Tanasia Barnes's life by gazing into her eyes. The Decatur, Illinois 2-year-old was no stranger to pain, starvation, and neglect. Her death in a near freezing, rodent-infested, filthy house is beyond heartbreaking. The investigation into her murder unearthed a tragedy. I'm Dee Dee Gatton, and this is a Project Illinois special report. Illinois' most vulnerable children are dying. Their stories need to be told. The government agencies tasked with protecting our children need to be held accountable as we seek justice for Tanasia. On March 14, 2016, Tanasia Cherie Barnes was born at St. John's Hospital. It was in Springfield where her young life began. But it was 30 miles down the road in Decatur, Illinois, where the tragic events of her life would unfold. Just over a year after she was born, she was removed from her mother's house and taken to live with her father and her stepmom, Megan Harris.
I say I love you.
She was definitely one of a kind. Like you could not have a bad day with her there. Like she always made everything better. Like with just her smiling and her playing around, and like she would just run around and just do stuff and just laugh at you, run around. Like she always did something to keep you smiling.
Tanasia also left her foster mom, Aisha Dean, with memories she'll treasure forever.
She was a happy baby. She liked to play outside. She had a door, a big wheel that she loved to ride. She would always point, you know, because she really couldn't say much. She was just clingy, and once she got to know you, she was on your hip.
She liked to do everything like just a normal kid would do. Like if you guys just look at her pictures and you could just be like, how can somebody just do that to her? And I'll never understand it. She was such a sweetheart.
.45 East North Street on a small child that is not conscious, not breathing.
We have some breaking news to bring to you. Decatur police are now investigating the death of a 2-year-old.
The horrid details quickly emerging the afternoon of February 11th when we learned 2-year-old Tanasia Barnes was killed.
Police say 2-year-old Tanasia Barnes spent her final moments locked inside of a cold bedroom, wrapped in a urine-covered blanket.
Decatur police say a 2-year-old was found wrapped in a urine-covered blanket with feces all over the floor. And an empty vodka bottle was close by that police say her mother used to give her water.
And this wasn't an overnight thing. This is something that had been going on for several months. That didn't go just happen. Her house just got dirty just like that, or feces on the floor. It wasn't just in a week or something. That had been going on for several months.
The autopsy also found Tanasia was extremely malnourished and dehydrated. And when they asked the mother about her weight, she said she gave her food but could not control whether she ate it or not.
Knowing the Tanasia that would sit down and scarf up meals and eat 2 to 3 plates of food, and then hear that Tanasia was weighing 21 pounds.
And saying that she couldn't make her eat. You didn't have to make her eat. She could have some food in front of her, she would eat.
And it wasn't just Tanasia's mother living in the home. She had a boyfriend who plays a big part later in this story. But it was Tanasia's father who felt the outrage.
My daughter died in that room alone, by herself. She died in that room alone, and that's what they did to her.
After finding out his little girl died in the home of her mother.
I said I love you, girl. Daddy said he loved you.
Tawanica Davis now charged with murder, involuntary manslaughter, and endangering the life and health of a child.
After Tanasia's mother was charged, I interviewed her in jail, but she told a different story about the days and weeks leading up to her daughter's death. Take a listen.
I'm a good mother. I have 2 kids. I take care of my kids well, very well. They live in a good home. They don't have to worry about nothing.
She was found, very cold and malnourished. What happened?
I love my child very much, and I miss my child, and I am not able to grieve because you guys keep on putting pictures of me in the news, every day.
But while Tawanica was in jail, the neighborhood united with expressions of grief and confusion over what had happened in their close-knit community, nestled in the heartland of Middle America.
How can you do that to your own child? I don't get it.
We would have done something.
She needs justice.
I can guarantee we would have came forward.
But it's heartbreaking. Any mother, I don't understand how you would fathom somebody to do this to your child and you to do it to your own child.
Today would have been Tanasia's third birthday, and neighbors decorated the home that she was found in with balloons and decorations to remember a life that many say was taken far too soon.
And while the outrage at Tanasia's untimely death swirled in the community, it wasn't only questions about what her mother had done, but what part her mother's live-in boyfriend played in the young girl's death.
Anthony Myers told me when he answered the door that there was nothing they could have done to help Tanasia. But people have been asking us why police only arrested the mother when there was another adult inside the house too.
How can the boyfriend has been there, how can you let that go on? He's just as fault as she is. You know, it's not just mom, him too.
And it didn't take long for Decatur police to start asking similar questions.
New developments to get to tonight. Anthony Myers, the man that lived in the same home as Tanasia Barnes, is now charged with her murder. Myers is the boyfriend of Tawanica Davis, Tanasia's mother.
This morning, he pleaded not guilty to murder and endangering the life and health of a child.
Macon County Coroner now officially saying that 2-year-old girl died of neglect, dehydration, starvation, and the cold. Now, the coroner's jury also ruled her death a homicide this morning.
For months, there was no development as we waited for justice to be served at Tawanica's trial.
What do you have to say about the allegations against you?
I have to say that the allegations are not true.
But there was a sudden turn of events just days before Tawanica was due in court.
Tawanica Davis pleaded guilty to murder.
Today's court date wasn't even scheduled to happen, but I spoke with the Macon County State's Attorney Jay Scott, who told me that Tawanica wanted to get it over with.
The judge sentenced her to 20 years in prison.
Do you think that justice was served today?
No. That was just basically a slap on the wrist.
Tawanica Davis is behind bars right now, serving time for the murder of little Tanasia, while her live-in boyfriend is still awaiting trial. But it's not just those who were charged with Tanasia's death that may bear some responsibility. Coming up, we'll tell you why Tanasia's family thinks the very agency that should have been protecting her didn't do their job.
It really makes me feel sick to my stomach because they couldn't do the one thing they were supposed to do.
And how DCFS fell under the microscope.
I felt that we weren't really protecting the child as much as we could have been. And to me, it wasn't going to be that hard to change it.
That's coming up right after the break.
This child didn't get a chance to play a softball, dance, recital, ballet, go to school, learn how to read, learn how to love.
Tanasia Barnes had her whole life ahead of her. Instead, her mother pleaded guilty to her murder after Tanasia was found neglected and freezing, her body temperature too low to register.
I wish she wouldn't have suffered the way she did. That's just unbearable, you know. For a child, that's unbearable.
But this wasn't the first time the state of Illinois was aware of Tanasia being neglected. 2 days before Christmas 2017, DCFS investigators found the home in disarray with no working heat, feces, and cigarette butts on the floor. Just 4 days after the call, Tanasia and her half-brother were removed. According to a DCFS document, Tawanica Davis and her boyfriend, Anthony Myers, were responsible for environmental neglect and cuts, welts, and bruises to Tanasia. After that, Tanasia went to live with her father just 10 months before her death.
You know, we had her hair, growing back, like her hair was growing back and she was gaining more weight. Like she was doing a lot better with us.
Come here, girl. Come on.
She stayed there for 3 months before DCFS removed her because of a hotline call against Tanasia's father and stepmom, an investigation that was eventually deemed unfounded.
It just never really made sense to me that they came in and took her. Why didn't they take my kids? If we were doing such a bad job, why did you guys just take her?
In June 2018, she was placed into foster care with Aisha Dean, where she stayed for less than 2 months. By court order, she was then returned to her mother and Anthony Myers after they completed parenting classes.
I just say a prayer over them as they go home, you know. Lord, watch over them. That's all I can do it because it's out of my hands. So once they go home, it's up to the parents.
The case was closed in October 2018. That was the family's last contact with the Department of Children and Family Services before her death. Even though DCFS received a hotline call less than 2 weeks later alleging medical neglect, that call never led to an investigation.
They definitely should have looked more into that because there was obviously a reason they wasn't taking her to the doctors.
Breaking news as we come on the air tonight, a 2-year-old girl dead.
When police arrived early Monday morning, it was 45 degrees inside the house. There was no running water. Police say there was also signs of rodent and insect infestation.
That part makes me sick, that she had to be in that.
Was it worse than you imagined?
Yes. I never thought it was that bad.
During Tanasia's time in DCFS custody, not only was her home life unstable, but her caseworkers were too. In 10 months, the agency placed her in 4 different homes and had 3 different caseworkers.
How can you have a rapport with a 2-year-old when you've only seen him a handful of times?
DCFS procedure requires home visits for 6 months after a child is returned. But documents show Tanasia was returned to her mother on August 8th. And on October 24th, DCFS ended involvement with her family once the case was closed by the court. DCFS documents show the agency did not follow up for the department required 6 months.
Her brother's case was closed in October. If Tanasia's case was still to been watched after 6 months as it's supposed to be, it would have been February.
But instead, in February, Tanasia took her last breath.
I said I love you.
As we dug deeper, the children kept dying and the numbers kept rising.
Kids are dying in DCFS care. What are you going to do to stop that, Governor?
We'll show you why state lawmakers and families say the one agency tasked with protecting the children failed. That's coming up right after the break.
I just feel like if it would have been their children or it would have been their family, they would have did a way better job. But it's just like, it's just another kid that's gonna go into the system and they just forget about them.
After the tragic murder of Tanasia Barnes, we started investigating the Department of Children and Family Services. That's when we learned Tanasia wasn't the first child to die after connections with DCFS.
New developments tonight, 98. That's how many children died last year in cases involving the Department of Children and Family Services.
Every year, the Office of the Inspector General investigates the death of Illinois children involved with DCFS 12 months before their death.
The stories came in from all over the state. To our west in Quincy, our sister station covered another tragedy.
8-year-old Toby Brewer and 5-year-old Emma Kramer have now been identified as the children who lost their lives in that fire on Friday night.
DCFS released a timeline showing there were 9 investigations for child abuse reports in as many years. In 2013, investigators removed all 4 children from the home after police found their mother passed out on the floor with meth. They were returned home 2.5 years later. The last investigation was 7 months before their death, when a hotline call was made that alleged the house didn't have heat or running water. DCFS says their investigation was completed after the house fire that killed Toby and Emma. police arrested their parents.
Marilyn Kramer and William Brewer were sentenced last week to 5 years in prison for child endangerment.
That's right. They pleaded guilty after authorities found damaged extension cords the parents used to supply electricity from the neighbor's home to heat their very own home.
Breaking news, another child in Illinois dead. 8-year-old Rika Roundtree, the suspect, her father's girlfriend.
DCFS also had an extensive history with Rika Roundtree's family.
I'm just so hurt that she's not here. She didn't even have a chance.
According to DCFS documents, they investigated Rika's parents and their significant others 6 times for child abuse and neglect to Rika before she died. All of those were ruled unfounded by DCFS.
And I told them, you guys didn't do anything. You guys did nothing, and now my daughter is dead.
The DCFS report states just 1 month before her death, the 8-year-old came to school with 2 black eyes. But the child told investigators no one hurt her. Rika died January 26th.
Police say that Rika Roundtree was kicked in the stomach so hard she died from her injuries.
Her father's girlfriend, Cynthia Clay, was convicted of the murder of Rika Roundtree.
Prosecutors say Clay had videos on her phone showing her abuse a victim they refer to as RR.
Her sentencing is scheduled for the end of January. In March, another death of an innocent Illinois child.
Jahir Gibbons died on Monday in Chicago from injuries he received from child abuse.
Jahir and his brother were removed from their mother's home and returned 3 months before his death. Police found him unresponsive, drooling from his mouth.
His mother, Brittany Heiss, charged with endangering the life of a child, and her boyfriend, Dejon Waters, charged with murder.
They both pleaded not guilty.
A caseworker in Jahir's case is also being investigated.
The day before Jahir's murder, a caseworker allegedly stopped by for a home visit and then reported that both Jahir and his brother were safe. But the report was resubmitted after the murder, changing the narrative, saying that Jahir actually was not home.
As we continue to learn the horrifying details of each and every case, it became clear that this was a serious problem. So we took our concerns to the governor.
Kids are dying in DCFS care. What are you going to do to stop that, Governor?
We've got to work hard not only to change the leadership at DCFS, but also to focus on the safety and security of these children. That's our job.
Weeks passed without another headline about a heartbreaking DCFS-related death. Until late April, when a Crystal Lake boy made national news after his parents reported him missing.
We have a missing child. Woke up this morning and he wasn't.
How old is the child?
Yeah, missing child.
Yeah, how old is he?
He's 5.
Well, the search for a 5-year-old missing boy has entered its 5th day in Illinois.
The search lasted 6 days before AJ was found wrapped in plastic, buried in a shallow grave in a wooden area a few miles away from the family's Crystal Lake home.
Because one death is one death too many, and AJ, 5-year-old AJ, should still be with us.
The 5-year-old's life started and ended with DCFS.
DCFS was involved with AJ Friend's family since the boy was born with opiates in his system. He was previously removed from the home while they investigated possible neglect.
DCFS returned him to his mother after she completed drug treatment. The department's timeline shows in late 2018, AJ told a doctor, "Maybe someone hit me with a belt. Maybe mommy didn't mean to hurt me." Still, investigators said there was not enough evidence to prove abuse. 4 months later, police arrested his mother, Joanne Cunningham, and father, Andrew Friend Sr., for murder. They both pleaded not guilty until early December.
Joanne Cunningham pleaded guilty today to murder. Her plea comes 8 months after her son, AJ Friend, was found dead.
She faces up to 60 years in prison, while Andrew Friend Sr. is still awaiting trial. And earlier, we told you about the 98 children that died with connections to the department in 2018. But the most recent numbers are even more shocking.
According to the Office of the Inspector General for DCFS, they're investigating 124 child deaths that occurred during fiscal year 2019.
Of course, my initial thought is sadness, regret for those children, regret for those families.
Mark Smith became acting director in April 2019. He's the department's 13th director in the last 10 years.
Mark brings decades of experience to this work, including as a former DCFS case manager, investigator, and supervisor.
He comes into the department at a time of heavy scrutiny.
This is a scenario where we are working on an airplane in flight. So we can't tear the whole system down and start from the beginning and ask everybody to take a pause. But what we can do is look at our system as we're moving forward and make adjustments and changes as we can.
Coming up, what state lawmakers are doing to keep cases like Tanasia's from being repeated.
We, as a state, are going to do everything we can to protect our children.
And how DCFS officials plan to repair the agency. Police say Tanasia Barnes spent her final moments locked inside of a cold room, weighing a mere 21 pounds. The heartbreaking details of her murder led to our call for change.
And I remember us talking about where do we go from here, and I said, well, I'll promise you this. I'm not going to just look the other way. I'm going to try to figure something out.
Just 3 weeks after we began covering the details of Tanasia's time in DCFS care, lawmakers held the first of a series of public hearings to question the Department of Children and Family Services.
My goal is that we can figure out what the problem is, and then we can find a solution.
Today, lawmakers held a special hearing about family experiences in DCFS. This is the second related hearing that the committee has held in just 15 days.
This agency has to be turned upside down and reconstituted in a thoughtful way.
One hearing after the other, the words from lawmakers kept intensifying.
We have really got to revisit removing some of these kids before they get murdered by their parents.
5 legislative hearings were held between March and May. One common theme, the department's lack of funding and resources.
This is an agency that has been neglected and underfunded and underprioritized for years, and that's why kids are dying.
These challenges are the result of many years of misguided decisions, underdeveloped program rollouts, and unacceptable funding cuts.
The governor and lawmakers felt it was time to give the struggling agency some financial relief.
The Department of Children and Family Services is getting $128 million more next fiscal year.
Now that's on top of its already more than $1 billion budget.
The increase allows for hire of 301 additional frontline staff, which includes caseworkers and investigators.
Lawmakers also passed more than 15 laws to help reform DCFS.
These new laws amend the Children and Family Services Act by adding 4 new requirements to better protect children in DCFS care.
But those most closely affected by this tragedy feel the department is still not headed in the right direction.
And now that they passed the law, like, are they really going to do it? Are they really going to do home safety checks, or are they just going to say they did it? They should have been doing that. If they would have been doing that, then she would possibly still be here.
Tanasia's father has filed a lawsuit against the private agency hired by DCFS and the supervisor on Tanasia's case.
Happy birthday to you.
And while no one will ever know what life had in store for Tanasia Barnes or the hundreds of other helpless children who lost their lives after involvement with DCFS, we do know that we need to continue pushing for what Illinois' most vulnerable kids deserve, an agency that is equipped to protect them, and a future where no child dies from abuse or neglect. Only then will we find justice for Tanasia.